All right, I'd like to call the meeting of the JFAC to order at 5 o'clock. First up, we will take a look and approve the minutes. So hopefully everyone saw those in the Slack. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion.
Thank you, Shannon. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ellen. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? I think I can see everybody. You can raise your hand. Great. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, everybody. So, as you all know, the Amherst board at their last meeting on Tuesday night voted to not put forward the facilities project. So I wanted to spend a large chunk of our meeting today talking about that and give everybody the opportunity to hear directly from the board, who we have are already our members, Ellen and Tom, I believe. Do I see Tom? Yep. And then also Josh and Beth are joining us. So I think maybe first up, I'll open the floor up to them. I know Beth and Josh had requested to attend the meeting, so I think it would be great to give them give them the opportunity to tell us how this came to be and have a discussion. So I'll turn it over to Beth and Josh.
So I just wanted to start by saying thank you all so much for all of the work that you've done. It is definitely not going to go to waste. The board, everybody here can speak for themselves, but the board is 100% behind this. It came down to timing. Personally, it has been an internal battle over the last week of what to do because of the timing of this. Hearing from the members of the community, it's hard. It's a hard year. We have so many people in the public and our taxpayers that have gone without pay, that have lost their jobs, that have had pay cuts, that have been furloughed, all of that. And this is a huge ask. On top of that, you know, we are in a race against time for cost of construction, the rates of the bonds, putting money into a building that we might want to have to tear, you know, that we need to tear down. So going between those was not an easy call. But when it comes down to it, we need a huge amount of support for this. This year, it's going to be really hard to get. We need to convince the 55 and over communities, the elderly in town. We need to convince the parents that are 100% behind us to actually get out and vote. We need to convince the families or the single, the people without kids in the school district to get behind this. As Adam said, we need, for every one no vote, we need 2 yes votes to make this happen. And with everything going on this year, it's a hard year to do it, but we are behind it. This is not the end. I actually have on our agenda already for our February meeting to begin discussions and create a plan for communication, how to get out there, how to educate and everything like that. The public and everybody, how to get everybody engaged, what we need to do. I've already messaged Amy, letting her know that we need, obviously we want to work with JFAC, but we need to work with JFAC. Up until now, and with all of this, it hasn't been a joint, hasn't been a huge joint effort, but from here on out, it needs to be. And that's the only way we can get this passed. We have a history in this town of taking years to pass stuff, but I think that we can pull this off. We just need the time to really educate the public of how important this is, what is going to go into this building, what every aspect of this plan means. So I just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Beth. Before I go to members for questions or comments, do any of the other board members want to say anything? No pressure if you feel like Beth covered it. Okay, so questions for Beth and the board.
I'll jump in and go first. I want to make sure that the board understands that this committee was operating as a subcommittee that was put out by the SAU. We were doing what we thought we were supposed to be doing and answering questions of anyone who asked us questions. I, for one, was shocked at the presentations that we gave to the Amherst School Board when we did not receive a lot of questions back. I was part of the PR committee, subcommittee, and I don't believe that we were ever asked to submit a formal plan of our PR plan. The PR group had been meeting since over the summer, along with our LaValle Bremsinger architects, including board members. So I think a disconnect is a shame that it's felt, although I'm just not quite sure that as a committee member, I feel like I knew there was a disconnect that was wanted. So I'll leave it at that for right now.
I'm not
Okay,
sure
fine.
Hand is up.
that was really a question or a statement or like what you.
It's a statement. It's okay. It's a statement. You don't have to answer it.
All right, Mr. Coogan.
I guess just from a clarity perspective, I just want to try to get my head around, and unfortunately, I was not able to attend the meeting on Tuesday. I'm just trying to understand what transpired over the last several weeks when we have, the group that voted in support of this, and then we raised this issue of like this because of COVID and because of the ability for potentially not everyone to attend in person for the town meeting, and we talked about it and we said no, we're going to stand our ground and move forward. And then now we get into Ways and Means, who supports it unanimously. And Beth, your comments around hearing from various different demographics of the community. I'm just trying to understand what happened in the last several weeks to have a material shift in opinion and kind of reverse course on votes that were cast about a month ago. I'm just trying to understand what the factors that went into that decision were.
I know for myself, a lot of it was my job as a board member is to hear from the public and hear from the community, especially after a public hearing, after, as part of presenting the plan and everything like that. And within that time frame of hearing, the hearing from the public, what was heard from, community members and taxpayers, some had no idea. We, at our board meeting, we had members from Summerfield show up to our board meeting on Tuesday. They basically said they didn't even know this was a thing. So, and the hardships and basically the lack of support over there, just because of the lack of information that's had. There was also a lot of, feedback gained from the public that, whether this isn't the year because of financial hardships or just because of the lack of education, the lack of information that the public had about this. So as a board member, I went about this with yes, I support this, but my job is to hear from the public. And, you know, the scales started tipping that, you know, between half or more than half of the public said, yes, I support this. And actually, you know, even with the Summerfield residents that had no idea, those that had started to hear a little bit, they want to support our schools. They just need more information and more time to think about this and need to hear the data more. But they all, you know, the feel was this isn't the year. So as a board member, that is my job, is to hear from the public and make that decision. So that's where I went.
Thanks, Beth. I see a few hands. I think I saw Ellen first and then Stephanie.
So as a board member, if you weren't able to watch, I voted against removing this as a warrant article. And, you know, we have all discussed all along the way the challenges that were in front of us, not only because we had a large ask, but because of COVID. But to communicate that this was a public education issue when we didn't have a warrant article to educate the public on yet is just not fair. So I think it lays upon JFAC to get the word out. And if people at Summerfield are listening now, they can go back in the Amherst Citizen for about a year and read editorials from JFAC that talked a lot about what we were doing. We also have public meetings every week, which can be found on the calendar. Every month. It felt like every week. Maybe it was every week. So those are on the calendar on the SAU 39. So for me, this was not an educational thing. Not yet. I think Beth received about 14 emails in question. I don't know how many in support, or maybe that might have been total. So that's a tough one for me to swallow, because you really can't educate the public until you have a warrant article to share.
Thanks, Alan. Stephanie?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things that were going on. I mean, people are distracted this year for many reasons. There's a lot of distraction because of COVID and kids who need the extra help, where the parents are trying to balance whether they're working, maybe they're not working, their kids' education, all these things, that the last thing they're doing is paying attention to this group. And I think that's a big piece of what happened. And people who are in the retiree category, not having and not feeling the connection, I think there's a lack of connection because we don't have, whether it's the Amherst Citizen, if they're not on Facebook and watching that, they probably have absolutely no idea any of this was even going on. I was amazed. I even have friends who I know I've mentioned that these buildings were going on. And when they heard about this $100 million bond, they're just like, whoa, wait a second. I don't have enough time to learn about this. So I think that honestly, I don't think there needs to be a single blame. I think we need to stop blaming anybody or any group, or we just need to move forward because it is a very hard year. And I think the idea that you guys are going to work together going forward as a board, along with JFAC, to start educating now is the right way to go.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Stephanie. I saw Brian's hand up again.
No, you should let Jeannie go first. She actually raised it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeannie.
I'll raise it again.
Did you use the raise hand feature? Thank you. Go ahead.
I did not, sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Yeah, just a couple things. I was very disappointed, I have to say, because I just thought we were, sort of on that path that, and as Ellen indicated, we needed to know, we needed to have a stake in the ground that this was actually going to be put forth before we started educating. And as a matter of fact, Ellen and I were working on a flyer that, would provide information to every household as part of our PR committee. And I I wrote to her a couple days ago before the board decided not to support this. And I said, is the board supposed to take another vote on this? Because I need to know if I'm going to put any more energy into this flyer, if this isn't going to be a thing. And, you know, I then waited to hear and found out that, of course, you guys had decided not to support it. It really surprised me too, because Tom did such an amazing job of presenting this proposal. And I can't imagine that he didn't support this and was able to pretend that he did when he made that presentation, because it was incredible. The other part of this that is, I am one of those retired senior people who you talk about, and I'm a huge supporter of this, but maybe because I'm a huge supporter of public education in general, and because I am part of JFAC, so I know a lot more than the average person. But you know, we have a fixed income, so obviously it's a big ask for us as well as anybody else. But I also believe that it's the best thing for the future of Amherst and for our kids. And we weren't able to convey that. We didn't get a chance to get that message out. And I know that it takes, you know, unfortunately, what happens is that you don't have enough time really to educate people. But my feeling was that if you put it forward this year, chances are it wouldn't get passed, but it would be a time when you could at least start the education process. And now you've delayed it a whole nother year before you can actually do that. So I know that Anne and Lance have talked about or mentioned something about having an education piece in their sort of toolbox that we could use this year. And I hope that that's the direction that we take. And I also, you know, agree with Ellen that I don't think JFAC or the PR committee knew that there was going to be concern about working together, because we had representatives from the Amherst board on those committees. So I guess if that was one of the reasons that you guys backed off of this, that just surprises me.
It's not that we haven't worked together. We were fine with it. I think that, you know, it wasn't that. It's not that we were expecting to work with you and we haven't, or, you know, it's just that we're, you know, it was part of the thing. If we're holding off, we might as well work together, right? It was just kind of one of those that, you know, rather than leaving it up to only you, because we also have heard the message several times over the last month that we need to own this. You know, the board needs to own this. This isn't JFAC's, this is the board's. So it wasn't that aspect that made, or at least that made me change my mind. It was, you know, it was just part of moving forward. This is what we should do as well. You know, moving forward, we should work together so that it is owned by the board, because I have heard the message that JFAC didn't feel like we owned it. You know, we voted unanimously in November to move forward with this. This is what we were going to do. And then, you know, once the question about deliberative popped up, you know, we had to do our due diligence and decide what we were going to do with that and what, you know, what the information was there. But it was, you know, so there was that point. If we needed to, if it was felt that we had to hold a in-person, a remote deliberative, moving forward wouldn't have been the point, but, or moving forward with it at that point wouldn't have worked, you know, but it was, the board is 100% behind it. We voted multiple times to be 100% behind it. It's just, And we are. It's just when it came down to it and presenting it to more people in the public and more than who shows up at our typical meetings and hearing from more people than who shows up at our typical meetings, we heard that this wasn't the year for various reasons. And that hit home.
All right, I'm going to go to Brian, and I don't want to cut off conversation, but I do want to maybe at some point move beyond this so that we can determine our path forward. But I don't want to stifle conversation if people have something pressing that they want to say. So Brian, you were next.
Thank you, Amy.
Yep.
In terms of, I just want to better understand what the reason for not putting it on the warrant article on the ballot was. I don't understand, like, what's the negative if you put it on there? If it gets voted and it moves forward, then the town supports it. If it gets voted down, it doesn't move forward and it doesn't impact people's economics. But then you'd have a clear line of sight as to where the totality of the voting public is versus, you know, you said half the people you talk to are in support and half were not. I mean, I don't know how you metricize that. I didn't talk to you. So I'm just trying to like get clarity in terms of, you know, how do you actually know what the town's pulse is until you hear from the voting public? You've heard from probably a vocal minority, and you've made decisions based upon a vocal minority, and you've taken away the opportunity for the public to actually put their votes either for or against these efforts. And I think that's really disheartening that the board didn't have the backbone to stand behind the work that they commissioned, that they've participated in, and that they voted in favor of. I find that to be very surprising.
So one of the aspects is there's a lot of political capital that goes into this, which sucks. Like, why do we have to deal with politics?
Why is there political capital involved? This is about building schools for kids, not for politics.
Oh, not like literal, not like.
Well, your words are literal.
That's
That's the only thing we can interpret.
It's, but there is a huge part of, there's known risks, and it has happened in the past with other projects. You know, Adam actually spoke really well about it the other night, that when it's the wrong time and it's still brought up and still brought forward, that it can actually hold off and prevent the project from happening at all, because the voters end up with a really bad taste in their mouth, and it makes it really difficult to pass in the future. So instead of bringing it forward and getting it passed next year, it could take 5-10 years for it to pass, if it ever passes at all. So that's a lot of it. It's not we changed our mind, we don't, you know, or at least for me, you know, it's not that I changed my mind, I disagree, any of that. It's I want this to succeed as much as possible. And I don't want the fact that we chose to put it forward in this year with everything that's gone on between, you know, people just not knowing enough about it so they vote against it, or people, you know, hurting financially and all of that, bringing it forward and leaving a bad taste in the voters' mouths about it this year. I don't want the entire project to suffer because of that aspect.
And Amy, I'm sorry for breaking course here, but I mean, we've been
Oh,
talking
that's
about
fine.
this for 2.5 years. We've
Yep.
gone before the public. This board got a budget approved to hire consultants to assess the buildings and make a recommendation on what we should do next, what's end of life, and how do we resolve that problem. The taxpayers have paid for that work to be done. And then you've now chosen to remove their opportunity to vote in favor or against renovating and building schools in the town. Those are your actions that you now own. And you've delayed the process again.
Honestly, the money hasn't gone to waste. I 100% plan on putting it on the ballot next year. no matter
How do
what.
we have confidence in you to do that, Beth, since you took it off this year?
I don't know. But the entire board, it was, you know, going back, and if you go back and listen, it
The
wasn't
entire
easy.
board was Ellen. Ellen was the only one that supported
Yep.
it.
Okay, so Ellen was the only one supported it. Josh, Tom, Terry changed her mind as well,
Yep.
because everybody was for it. And it was, you know, a lot of it was, you know, we said, okay, this isn't the year, but this is what we're going to do starting in February, our next board meeting, to make this happen for next year. We are putting it out there that we are doing this.
Josh, I see your hand up, and then I see Shannon.
Yeah, so Brian, 100%, we need to own the blame just like we would have owned any success if it had gone through, and you're right. I would encourage you to watch the meeting in terms of, I think there was clear support amongst the board for this project, and there has always been clear support for this project, and my support remains steadfast. And I am disappointed in where we are, and again, I accept a good deal of the blame for where we are, but I can, you know, accept the blame, and I can wish all we want that we are in a different place. At this point, I'm trying to look forward, because I know the needs have not changed, and I know that our facilities haven't magically become perfect overnight, although I know Roger continues to do a great job on them. So I think if you watch the board meeting the other night, and you listen to the tenor of and the tone of that meeting, I do not think that anyone was happy with where we landed. And I think, again, I think the board accepts the blame for this being delayed for a year and for another group of kids who won't be in proper facilities. And I think at this point, I am looking forward and ahead, and I know that we have a group of experts sitting around here today who are probably very frustrated, and rightly so. But we will need you, and we will need your voice moving forward. And whatever bridges that we need to repair, I hope that we can repair them, because to get to our end goal, which is new facilities in this town, we will need every single one of you and more to get there. So again, I am sorry for where we landed, but I can be sorry all day, and that's not going to change where we need to go. So I don't know that I can say anything else, but you have my apologies, and certainly I am willing to accept a good deal of blame for where we are.
Thank you, Josh. Shannon, and then Tom.
Tom can go ahead. I think his hand was up first.
Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. I don't have a whole lot to add to this, but I will say that my gut reaction for right or wrong, and the reason I voted the way I did last night, was I don't think it's time, and it's something I've wrestled with, but I don't think $100 million project. To me, I couldn't get over that. I felt that it was short-sighted to put it up in a COVID year. So right or wrong, that's where my gut said last night. And, I still debate it now, whether it was the right decision or not, but that was a choice that we made last night. And it was just purely a financial decision in what is a tough year. So maybe it doesn't get better next year, but I do support the project, obviously, but just in the end, I couldn't change my mind, or I couldn't unsway myself to go with that gut instinct. So that's what I have about that.
Thanks, Tom. Shannon, you want to, if it's okay, folks, we're going to wrap up this part of the conversation.
Yeah, sure. I'll round it out. So there's a lot of different lenses that we could put on this, right? It's a tough year. You could also look at it that it's a year where people need hope, and school buildings are places where we're educating our future leaders. And boy, if a new building isn't a sign of hope, I don't know what is. I think that next spring, people are still going to need hope. So it's unfortunate that the traction that we had and the momentum that we had last year, last March, there was a lot of enthusiasm for this. And I think there still exists a lot of enthusiasm for this, particularly in the parent community. I know I presented at the PTA recently, and I've heard from numbers of parents who really understand kind of the need. that they supported. I understand that there's folks out there who aren't even aware of what's going on. So to Stephanie's point, there's a lot on everyone's plate right now. I'm really excited for the progress that JFAC has made with the Souhegan School Board and the things that they're moving forward this year. So that's a big win for our school community. And hopefully the public will be properly, informed and supportive of that, because those are equally as important as the things that we're working on here in Amherst. I appreciate your comments, Beth, about all of us working together and all the communication that needs to go out. We've been talking about that for a long time. So it's definitely gonna take a team. So as soon as the board has some clarity and direction for volunteers, then I think, there's probably plenty of people to support it and keep moving. Because the need is not going away. And as we know from our work, it's the costs are only escalating. I think 4 to 5% a year is what we're looking at now. So.
Thank you, Shannon. So yeah, I'm not going to add a lot because I think everything really has been said. Obviously, there's disappointment, which I'm sure you as board members expected. And, I think there will be disappointment in the community as well. That being said, I think following along what Shannon said, it's time to look forward. And I truly hope that this group will continue. I think we've been educated on the issues and what we believe the solutions are. So I know we're all feeling a bit deflated, and I share in that, but I really hope that we can, maybe lick our wounds and rally and move forward, because we all know it's the right thing to do for our school community. So with that though, I do want to get down to some specifics with the board here and understand and just clarify in public that are you looking for us to move forward with this project as it stands in terms of the scope and the funding mechanism? So I just want to provide clarity on that for everyone who is hopefully planning to continue with this effort, so that there isn't any misunderstanding about where we're going. So I'd look to the board members for that. John, did you have a question?
I think you're doing it in reverse, Amy. I think you need a letter or a word saying from each school boards to saying they still would like us to continue doing it. So we get to the point that we have, shall we say, a contract still.
Yeah,
that's the way I look at
understood.
it.
Yeah, so we're looking for the board to provide us with direction, because what we don't want to do, Beth, is go out with our website and our PR plan when perhaps you're thinking, hey, well, we heard community members say that, I heard one community member say, I want you to phase this project. So that was a specific request from a community member. So I think as a committee, we need to hear from you all that the plan that we have developed for the scope of the project and for the financing plan is in fact staying intact, and it's just being delayed a year. Because what I don't want to do is have any confusion out there in the community. We need to be lock in step with the board.
Correct. So,
and maybe you don't have the answer to that, but we will want that answer in short order.
I mean, I can bring it up for a vote of the board. However, the message of the board on Tuesday night was, we are all 100% happy with the plan that was offered, exactly how it was offered. I can definitely bring it up for a vote just for clarification so everybody knows where we're going if you would prefer. However, we've got 4 of us here right now, but it's everybody agreed and backed the not phased approach, the all in, the logic behind it, the reason behind it, and everything.
Okay.
And
So I think John's point is well taken, that, we need that clear direction from you all.
I can definitely I will bring that forward at our February meeting and let everybody know that, to move forward, that's what you guys are looking for from us. I'm happy to do that.
Okay. And then I saw Brian's hand, but when is your February meeting?
The 8th.
Is it early? Okay. Yeah, because I think, assuming that we are going to move forward with the plan intact, I think we want to make sure we don't miss the opportunity to engage voters as we go to deliberative and as there are votes, and they're being in the situation we are in with not as much time for meeting face to face. We want to make sure that we capitalize on any and all of those opportunities.
Yeah, Tom had actually thrown out the idea of having and asked Adam if we're allowed to have the pamphlet available at voting to, this is coming next year kind of a thing. I think he said, Adam, I don't remember if you said yes or you'll check.
Yeah, you can. You need to be outside. You can't be in the polling place, obviously, and it's up to the moderator, but just like anybody who's campaigning, you're allowed to hand out literature.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Tom threw that out, just as we get to, there's 2,000 to 3,000 people that typically show up that day. It's probably going to be different this year. But at least a first, round of getting it out there. We had talked about actually having information at deliberative as well, as a handout or something, if we can pull that off. But yeah, I just wanted to get that out there.
Okay. Brian, did you have a question or comment?
In terms of clarity and scope and what's being asked, what I'm hearing is that the board was in full support, even though we're not putting on the article, we're in full support, and that what was recommended, everyone agrees to, and is what they want to champion forward to be put on in 22. But what I'm also hearing is that it's a lot of money. It's a hard year. It's a lot to ask for. So a year from now, it's going to be even more money. So you're going to be asking for more. So is it a scope issue in terms of what are we addressing? Or is it a cost issue in that what is the community willing to fund? Because if we're going to get to this same spot next year, and it's a bigger number, and the circumstances haven't materially changed, I mean, the economics are not going to be materially different 12 months from now. So what is it that you actually want us to do moving forward? Are we changing the scope and what is being delivered, or are we driving towards a dollar amount?
I will have the board create an official vote on that on February, just for clarification.
I think you have to go further than just a vote on it. You're gonna have to articulate what it is.
That's what the vote would be for, is like a full articulation of what our end goal is. But we also have to vote on what that end goal is, so.
Jeannie?
Yeah, I like the idea of it maybe at deliberative. And I know that Adam said something about it was like it was like campaigning. In fact, you all probably need to explain at deliberative what happened, and so I would take that opportunity to educate people about what's coming next year at deliberative, and not have it be something outside. I mean, it's something that you all supported and then didn't support. So I think the taxpayers need an explanation on that, and you could take that opportunity to educate people about what the plan was and what it's going to be next year.
We were going to do both, like the verbal art, as part of the presentation, but also have a some take home something.
Great,
Great.
thank you.
Ellen?
I'm going to encourage the JFAC members. So it seems that there is also a concern about the size. I mean, I've heard that thrown around of the ask. So I'm going to encourage JFAC to sort of hit the ground running with communication in the community. I don't want to see us work real hard like we have been since the last vote, and then next year hit a cement wall again with the fear that we put it on, it's too big, let's change it. So let's hear from the community. What do they feel? We haven't had that opportunity, right? We didn't get that opportunity. So let's do what we would have hoped to do March 9th. Let's hear from the community. Is $100 million, which will probably be 110. Who knows what it will be next year? The bond rates are certainly going to be higher. We all know that. So what is the community? Does the community want us to phase it through? Would they rather have 66 first and then 5 years later, 33? Does that give us the opportunity to get the fifth graders down? I think that, I had some plans. Certainly my neighborhood Zoom meeting was one of them, to touch base and, ask the community and educate them. People in my neighborhood who don't have little kids may not know the condition of our schools. Shannon and Brian's video, right, is education enough. We know we were going to hit the ground running with all of that. We all had our subcommittees. We were going to hit the realtors. We were going to hit this group of parents. We were going to hit that group of, we had it all planned out. But maybe we need to talk with those people. I would be more comfortable with JFAC getting that word than I would the Amherst School Board.
I don't see any other hands up. Victoria, go ahead.
You're on mute.
Thanks, guys. I want to get a little bit of clarification about our contract with LaValle Brensinger. I feel like, and I could have misunderstood this, but I felt like we were nearing the end of our contract at some point in maybe like December. And then we're hearing now that LaValle Brensinger can help us with a PR plan to get us through to the March 22 ballot, which seems further in the future. So my question is kind of twofold. Part of it is for Anne through LaValle Brensinger, and part of it is for Michelle and Adam through the school district to really understand what it is. I've seen a contract, but like what exactly we still have left. And then financially, what was it that was in the budget? What was it that has been spent in the budget? Is there more money? Has that money been, moved and used for something else, or what is available really for this group? And then, when we're talking about public relations and reaching out to people through the deliberative or through March 9th and voting, is there any money to educate the public on where these things stand, not to sway votes, but to educate, for any print materials or anything like that?
Thanks, Victoria. Yeah, all good questions. So maybe start with Anne. You can talk about the contract and your plan to bring us over the finish line into 2022.
Yeah. Thanks, Amy, and thank you for that question, Victoria. So first of all, I think everyone's done just an amazing job. This is a great group of people. It's incredible to me how diverse, everyone is. Some of you have children in the system. Shannon, I think you have 4 kids in the system. Some of you have grandchildren in the system. You're from different towns. Some of you sit on the school board. Some of you are just volunteers. It's a really wonderful and really committed group of people. And I know that there's a lot of things that are like going on with the school board and all this, and some decisions were made, and some of you agree with it and some of you don't. To get back to what Shannon said, to keep moving, I think that there's still a lot of momentum. And I am in agreement that I don't want to see this momentum die. I don't want it to go away. I want to keep going with that. And so LaValle Brensinger, our contract, my understanding is it's basically done. But what we want to do is we want to help you craft that plan. And what I mean by that engagement plan, that PR strategy plan, what I mean by that is we've done this so many times. There's no reason why you can't ask us questions and why we can't, help you. It's basically kind of a giant Excel spreadsheet. It's to help you get really organized. You have all the tools. You have the website. You've been writing the articles. Now you know everything there is to know about it. You've identified groups. Ellen, you were just talking about your neighborhood group. I know a bunch of you sit on other committees. So the outreach, the network, the grassroots organization is already there. And so we just want to build on it. And so what LBA wants to do, probably because we spent the last year with you, and you start to really get committed to US people and then your town, and then you get really attached to the project and you get excited about it. And so just because the school board isn't moving it forward to a warrant article this year doesn't mean our attachment diminishes. So what we want to do is continue to help you, because contractually we're pretty much done. We can't do as much perhaps as we want, but we're not going anywhere, and we will continue to be your resource. And I think Adam can probably add to that, because I know you've been talking to Lance, but I just wanted to get that out there, that even though everything's delayed a year, we still have work to do, and we're going to be there with you as we all do it.
Does that answer your questions, Victoria?
Yes and no. I apologize. I have worked with Anne for months, and I love Anne, and she is so helpful. However, I have to say that I don't know. I guess part of it is that I, as a committee member for the PR committee, I'm not quite sure what I thought that the PR committee was supposed to create versus what LaValle Brensinger was going to create, per se. And I think the thing that we need to work on in the future is just really understanding for this JFAC committee, if this is the group that's moving forward with this, or if the board is the group that's, really getting into it, we all need to understand how we work and what our roles are and what the correct expectations are. So I appreciate that Anna's telling us that they're going to be there if we have questions. But I think to think that they are going to provide us with the PR materials, I don't want anyone who is on the board who's listening in possibly for the first time to think that that means that these things are created. They are going to have to be created by someone on the JFAC committee or someone on the school board. So there is still a lot of work to do, even for a flyer to hand out at deliberative. So I just want to make sure that point is clear to other people, as it was something that I had to learn. And then, the second part of my question is the money question. So that's back to Adam and Michelle.
Yeah, I'm just refreshing my memory about, I'm trying to remember how much we budgeted last year for this specific project for the planning phase. But short of me finding that, and I'll get the exact number, maybe Michelle, you have it more handy, but I think we have some room left in what we budgeted. Thank you, Shannon. I was thinking 150, didn't want to say that out loud if I was wrong, but we've only contracted with LaValle for about 100 grand. So there is some available funds for this next year if we need them. We would have to have those, sorry for my dog. We would have to have those contracted by June 30th because they are funds that were set aside for this fiscal year. But outside of that, we can certainly spend those funds in preparation for next year. And Michelle,
Right.
please.
So,
Please
yeah, go
verify
ahead.
what I said, Michelle, to make sure that I have it right.
I'm pretty sure you're right, Adam.
It is 150. I was going to try to.
And it's like 98 and change maybe for the contract. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's great. I think maybe what would make sense would be, we have a really active PR subcommittee. And I think maybe working with LBA to sort of determine roles and responsibilities so that we have a clear path going forward on who's doing what. So I think we could probably take that out of this meeting and meet as a subcommittee, and probably would need Adam or Michelle there so that we can make sure we get the finances squared away.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Does that sound like a good plan?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, Shannon. Oh, and then John.
I just, again, I think I want to circle back to the direction from the board before any committee or subcommittee from this group meets with LBA. I want that to be clearly defined. To Brian's point, I don't want to, you know, I know several of us are years into this, and beyond hours worth of time and dedication. So I don't want to end up next spring. But the thing is, we may have the knowledge, but we don't have the authority or the responsibility. That lies with the board. And so the direction needs to come from the board in tandem with the SAU, that this is in fact where the priorities lie. And before, I mean, I can't speak for everyone else in the committee, but before I'm willing to meet with anybody else. And I'm, you know, full throttle support of this, but I don't want to hit this wall again.
So is it fair to say that, you know, we're going to need to wait to have the board take that vote before we engage the PR subcommittee again? Does that sound like a reasonable path? John, go ahead. Okay. John.
As regards to the contract with the LBA, I recommend that Adam looks for an extension on it, so we still have the powers to make the options for us when we do presentations. That's all it takes. Just ask him to extend it. And then, of course, the school board has got to approve the monies.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you, John. Okay, so I think that is sort of defining our path. We'll wait for the board to deliberate and take a vote, and then we can hopefully re-engage the PR subcommittee on a path forward. And then I do think that we probably need some further discussions on how we're bridging the JFAC and the board, and how that is all going to function over this next year. So we don't really have time to go into that tonight, since it's 5:53 and we have an SAU board meeting in a few minutes. But I'd like everyone to think about that, and we can take that up at our next meeting, which I think is when, because I want to make sure that we plan out the timing a bit so we don't lose any time to begin the PR process.
Yeah, February 18th was our next scheduled meeting, I think.
Okay.
For JFAC.
And when is deliberative?
February 2nd, I think, right?
Correct.
Oh, it's the 2nd. Okay, so that's any suggestions, Beth? Do you think that you can get your board to act sooner than your February 8th meeting, so that we have that direction? Because otherwise we lose out on the PR subcommittee doing work for deliberative.
Let me get back to you tomorrow on scheduling and see what I can pull off.
Okay, so yeah, it would be great if we could get that done this month, and then we can re-engage and do what we can. I mean, there's not a whole lot of time, and you know, I don't want to have our PR folks burning the midnight oil. So the sooner you can do that, the better.
And
then I'm sorry to speak out of turn, but real quick,
okay.
So this, you know, the website is out there, and it's out there. Are we leaving it out there? There is some language on there that talks about ASB moving a bond forward, so that clearly needs to be changed.
Yeah.
Beyond that, is there any direction on you know, what the board or the SAU wants to do with that? Are we good to leave it open?
my opinion is we're good to leave it open, Shannon, just without the language that we're moving it forward for March 9th of this year. But I think it's, and if there's a way just to change it, that, the intent is to bring this project forward in March of 22. We can leave that vague, or we can leave that out at the time being, but I think maybe just call it the future Amherst Schools project. But my vote is to leave it in there. I don't want to speak for the board, but my vote would be to leave it up. Because I will reference it, or I plan to reference it at deliberative.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Dee Dee?
Yeah, just a quick question to follow up on Ellen's suggestion that we find a way to hear from the public, about their suggestions or concerns. Is there a way, I don't know what Ellen had in mind for that, whether it was a survey or, exactly something at the March election that people would fill out, or whether there's some place you could put a survey on the website that people could start to make comments. I don't know. I wanted to tap into that suggestion.
Yeah, and I think that will be part of the re-engagement of the PR subcommittee. Do you agree, Ellen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Amy, I'm just going to be rude and do a big shout out to Tim Atkins, who I twisted his arm.
Yes.
And he put a lot of work into this. And now if it's going to kind of go, not live, the opposite of live, I don't want to say dead, but I guess that's what it means. I just want to make sure Tim's hard work is mentioned here.
Yeah.
And Christine,
Sounds like it's staying live, and
Yeah,
he's amazing. He is amazing.
Yep. Yeah. It sounds like we're going to keep it up. So, all right. So I'm going to wrap us up here. And, again, I know this was probably a tough meeting to go through, but I think we all needed to have it. We needed to be able to talk openly about this. But I think we all believe in the mission of this, and we know this is the right thing for our community. And I think that, we are a group of very dedicated folks, and I think we can move forward with positivity and make this a reality for our community. So I look forward to that, and I will be in touch via Slack after I hear from Beth and the board as to when they will be able to take their vote to give us our marching orders.
Thanks for all your work, Amy and Shannon and everybody.
Oh, good.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good